Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Georgina Paskogan, and I'm a co-founder for Final Bath for Yellowface. And welcome to today's episode of What is the Tea? A daily conversation with a dancer of Asian descent for the duration of May to celebrate Asian Pacific Heritage Month. These discussions highlight the achievements and experiences of Asians in dance. And today I have Frances Chung from San Francisco Ballet with me. And this is the first time we're meeting, so I'm really, chatting. We've seen each other in the ballet class on the Zoom a lot lately, so I'm very excited to introduce you. And who would you like to call out for donations today?
So since we met here, I'm going to go with Worldwide Ballet Class, and it's run by dancers, for dancers. And I want to, it's like one of the first streaming platforms that was started during this quarantine, and it's really taken off in the last couple of months. So Worldwide Ballet Class, go Diego and Ruben. And it also supports teachers who aren't currently working. So if there are donations to be given, I would love to give back to people in our community who, need the help.
Yeah, and are really rising to the occasion, making classes available. I'm really, really grateful for them too. So it's, like I said, it's really lovely to sit down and chat with you. I just want to touch base first and be like, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? This has affected everyone. What are you missing right now?
It's, I feel a little bit like guilty to say, but I am living a great life right now. I mean, obviously it's not like under ideal circumstances, but I had a baby 9 months ago, and just seeing him grow every day in the last couple of months have been incredible. Like it's a time that I would never have had, and I'm just really grateful. Obviously, I miss being on stage and being with people that I love, and working on the craft that I came back so regular. Like I trained really hard to get back on stage after giving birth, and it's kind of sad that it got cut short. But yeah, in all honesty, I'm spending more time with my family than I ever would have, and I'm just grateful for the time.
That's an amazing positive take on this whole situation, and congratulations. That's what an amazing thing to have that time to bond and also just adjust. I imagine that's such a huge transition, just becoming a mother, and happy belated Mother's Day.
Thank you.
What can you speak to this? Is like, I'm just so intrigued by this. A friend of mine, Sterling Hilton, she just had her baby, which must have been crazy. And I don't know what the regulations are right now with having a child during a pandemic. But what was your sort of routine to come back to stage? And yeah, that is a bummer. But we're going to be back on stage eventually, and it's really great to know that your head's in the right place, that like family is definitely most important right now.
Coming back was rough. When you're healing from actually my friend Ludmilla, who's also in the company, just had a baby girl, and her description was, I thought, hilarious. She was like, it's like having an explosion down there. And that is what it felt like. So you're healing from that. And then actually, I want to say, I think in just under like all circumstances of having a kid and whatnot, everything went so smoothly for me. So I have nothing to complain about. And I continued dancing through my pregnancy up until the last month. And actually it was a time where I kind of renewed my love for dance. It was the first time since I was, 17 where I was dancing just for me, to have fun, and I could do it if I wanted to, and I didn't have to do it if I didn't want to. And it's so interesting because I ended up choosing to go to class every day, and I watched more ballet than I ever had. If I were still dancing professionally, I feel like every professional knows if you have a day off, you stay home, you stay away from the theater, just because it's so rare. So, it was such an amazing time for me to renew my passion for dance. And then, so coming back, I was very motivated. I had, spent the year just watching my colleagues be amazing and kind of seeing things from the other side, being able to see dance without feeling the chronic pains, without, dealing with the internal political stuff that is a lot of times not enjoyable, and just, enjoying it for what it was. So, I was really motivated. I think I started back in the studio 6 or 7 weeks after he was born, and I took it super slow. I did what I felt like I could do, and I, still enjoyed the time. Obviously, he was tiny. He has a tiny little blob, and I spent most of my time with him. But I don't know. Slowly, I came back. Our ballet master Felipe really, got his sergeant hat on and really drilled me back into shape. And I came back. He was born August 14th, 1919, and I came back for Nutcracker in December. So
that's impressive. Wow.
It was a journey. I don't know. Through it all, honestly, I can't complain.
It's a wonderful dose of perspective to have, and like how great that given the choice, you still choose to move your body. You choose to come back to this ritual that we have dedicated our lives to, good, bad, ugly, and still find it's definitely, it speaks to the passion that we all have. Just instilled in us, that kind of ilk that it takes to become a professional dancer, man or female. So thank you for sharing that and going out of the scope of what my questions that I sent you are. But now getting back on track, can you let our viewers know what made you start dance training?
So I come from a pretty typical, like, Asian American, I'm from Canada, so Asian Canadian family. So my parents put my older sister and I in piano and ballet just to, instill some discipline in us, kind of keep us out of trouble after school, make sure we have something to do to focus on so we're not, getting in with the wrong crowd. I don't know. I feel like that's very Asian parent thing to do of their generation. So, I started when I was 5 taking ballet classes, and it was really just an extracurricular thing. I don't think my parents really ever intended for me to become professional. I honestly didn't even think that was in their scope of, when they entered me into ballet class. That wasn't really, it was mainly just to keep us out of trouble.
No, excellent. And then when was the moment in time where you were like, I love this now, and not only do I love it so much that I want to do it as a profession, I can actually achieve this so it's a 2-part question. I feel like I actually have a shot to get this as a career.
It was a gradual thing for me. I never had one of those like aha moments when I was a child, like watching Swan Lake or something where I'm like, that's what I want to do. I feel like it was like a slow, gradual love that grew for me. I mean, I think it became more serious when I entered high school, and I had the option of still going to a regular public school, but they offered like a half-day program. So we would do our academics in the morning, and then we would go do our selected art or sport. There were figure skaters, tennis players, and a lot of dancers and some pianists in this school, and they offered this program where basically you, instead of doing extracurricular classes in the school, you would go off and do your kind of focused art or sport. So I think when I entered high school, that's when it kind of all became more serious. And then I would do like local competitions and do like generally well. I think at 12 years old, I won my first trophy, have lots of pictures of that trophy. And then slowly, I think at 15, I did my first international competition. I did a few of those, and I did well. And my parents, honestly, just always supported me. They never, I always find it so incredible when I think back, especially because I'm a parent now, but it was one of those things, like my teacher would be like, okay, we want to enter your daughter in this competition, and it costs XYZ. And then my parents would just, they were not wealthy at all. And they would just, somehow get the money, pay for it. And then I would go off and do a competition and, get the costumes, buy the point shoes. And I think they rarely asked, like, is this worth it? Like, are we just pouring money into nothing? They would just do it. So I'm totally going off track.
No, it's totally following the string of events here. So when did you did this international competition, and I take it you did well. And I did not grow up in the competition circuit. So explain to me, and maybe to our viewers, like, did you get selected for an apprenticeship from there? Is that how you got like a scope of what companies might be a proper fit for you?
Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of maybe turned my parents into like the professional world, because a lot of times when you do well, you get like monetary awards. So in some ways, like, they were making some of the money back that they shelled out to begin with. So there was that. And then I forget what competition. It might have been Prix de Lausanne or whatnot. I got a full scholarship to Boston Ballet, like a 6-week summer school with Boston Ballet. So I did that. And then they offered me, like an apprenticeship with Boston Ballet after that summer session, but I still had 1 year of high school to complete. So my parents were like, absolutely not. You're going to finish school, at least high school.
Right.
So I came back to Vancouver, finished out high school, and then that year was my graduation year. And Elise Bourne, who is a Balanchine repertoire, she came to my school to set Serenade, and she was ballet mistress at San Francisco Ballet at the time. And I think she just told me to go audition, or maybe she didn't even say that. I'm not sure. Actually, I auditioned for San Francisco Ballet because the Boston Ballet company auditions were being held there. So I went to San Francisco to audition for Boston Ballet. Now I remember. And then they were like, oh, actually, they're also auditioning for San Francisco Ballet. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going to do this too.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I got a contract with San Francisco Ballet after I graduated from high school. And I honestly didn't know anything about the ballet world. I didn't know what company was what, where San Francisco Ballet stood to Boston. I knew about ABT and New York City Ballet, but I think I remember sending VHS tapes to all these companies. But at the end of the day, I chose, this is embarrassing to say, but we chose San Francisco Ballet because the paycheck was the highest there. So I was like, okay, we're going to go here.
Hey, that is honest and fair and valid. Like, that is totally fine.
Oh, God.
But how awesome it's like you'd like pick of the litter. That's really it's really great, and I love you just like endeared yourself to me so much because I did the VHS sending the tapes. Like I know that so well. And I also love that like ballet for you was this slow burn, and you just were kind of present in it, and how like you. You didn't apply any extra pressure to that process of learning this craft and perfecting this craft. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure competitions were very pressure filled and got your adrenaline going, but it wasn't just like, I have to get into this one certain company. I think it just having an open mind to like, wherever this takes me, I'm just going to flow with it is really, it's a new point of view that is a fresh perspective, and I like that a lot. So thank you for sharing all of that. All of that was great information. So the next question I have is, can you explain to our viewers your ethnic and cultural heritage, and to what degree are you connected to it?
So I am fully Chinese. My dad is from Hong Kong. He was born and raised in Hong Kong. And my mom is from Canton, mainland China. They both immigrated to Canada in their 20s. They met in Canada, and then they had my sister and I. So we're born in Canada. We're Canadian. And how I'm connected, you know, my sister and I always joke about this, but she was always surrounded by Chinese friends, and I was always surrounded by Caucasian friends. I'm not sure if it's just because in the ballet world, there's generally just more Caucasians than there are Asians, and so I obviously spend 99.9% of my time growing up in the studio. And so yeah, I think it just kind of happened naturally. I don't think it's necessarily a choosing, but I think my greatest connection to my Chinese heritage is probably through food, which is like kind of like highly valued in, I want to say, Chinese culture. Like if you can eat well and try everything at least, and if you can eat everything, it's like highly valued. So I'm married to my husband who's Caucasian, and my family loves him because when we go to dinner, he'll try everything at least once. So he's had chicken feet. He'll even have, like, I've never had durian because I like the smell is too intense for me, but he's had durian. So
oh, wow.
I love him because, yeah, he can eat well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I agree with the food thing. It's also just really awesome to have a ballerina who like loves food and loves the experience of food. I feel like that's with a lot of cultures, food is such an anchoring point. And like we had a great discussion with Ed Liang.
Oh my gosh, Ed and I will go eat.
Yeah, he was just like
passion.
Yes, he was just like, listen, don't knock Columbus, Ohio, because I found river prawns the other day. And so he's like, I have this whole meal planned. From like start to finish. He's like, when do I ever have time to make? He's like, you know, like all this cooking is so involved and so much prep work. And now I actually have the time. His eyes lit up. It was so great to see it. So
oh my gosh. So Ed and I have known each other for a little while, but our paths crossed again while I was pregnant because Idaho Ballet was doing his Cinderella, and the director at Idaho Ballet now, Garret Anderson, is a really close friend, so he had me come out to teach class, and we just like Garret and his family, Ed and I, while we were there, we would just plan menus every day, and wow, we ate really, really well. Like I've never had lobster mac. Was it lobster? I think it was lobster mac and cheese for the first time. He's very fancy, Ed Liang.
That is bourgeois. That's great. I love that. I love Ed. Ed and I shared a little bit of time in the company together at City Ballet. And he was, you know, one of the only people who sort of represented like my culture or being Asian. And so to get to talk to him was really, really special. I hope you get a chance to listen to it too. But I love that you guys both have this like shared food thing, which is wonderful. And me too. I've like been on a dumpling kick. I've been making dumplings, and my sister's like not a huge cook, so they just sort of like, hey, can you make them again? So I'm definitely getting my fair share of cooking in.
I feel like we could probably just spend the rest of this, however much time we have, talking about food, because I literally have like ground pork and ground lamb in my fridge and like dumpling wrappers in my fridge, like ready to go. Yes. I haven't had time to make them yet, but
maybe like it's like a Frances and Georgina have like cooking with Frances and Georgina.
Oh my gosh, I'm down.
I'm sure Phil will get in there too. He'd love that. Okay, yeah, for sure. We're gonna have to plan that, at least just like a cocktail hour cook date, because like it's more fun when you're cooking the same dish and just going back and forth and trading sort of like family tips and stuff. So like you do have this connection to your culture, be it food, but like beyond that, do you find that your heritage has informed the choices you make as a dance artist?
I mean, you can't. I feel like you can't separate any of that, right? You are who you are. So I don't think I have necessarily thought of it as influencing me as a dancer. I think also because I've always tried to be me in the dance world. It's a lot easier now that I'm older, more experienced, more confident in who I am. I think when I was younger, it was definitely an insecurity. I don't know if it's necessarily had to do with my culture or my race, like the coloring. I think a lot of it was just, you know, my own personal, you know, I feel like every young ballerina has insecurities, and any young ballerina who's like super confident, those are the gals who just like, you know. And for me, everything was always like a slow learning process, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. But in terms of how, you know, my parents, they've always been proud of their culture. It's funny because growing up, we people in Vancouver always called Vancouver Honcouver, because I think before what was it, like year 2000, before China retook over Hong Kong, there was like a huge influx of people coming from Hong Kong to Vancouver specifically. So there's a huge Chinese population, and you actually probably, you can go to Vancouver and not have to speak English, or our second language is French. There's such a huge community of Chinese people in Vancouver. So growing up, I was surrounded by Chinese people, the Chinese culture. I went to Chinese school. I mean, I did terribly in Chinese school. My ballet school actually is run by a couple from Mr. and Mrs. Go. They're originally from Beijing, China. Their daughter was a principal with National Ballet of Canada, Chaconne Go, My teachers used to, and they there were teachers at the Shanghai Academy, and then they immigrated to Vancouver for a little while, taught at my school, and now they're back in Shanghai. I think he's like the director, and she's still a teacher at the National Shanghai Ballet School. And they actually trained Yuan Tan, who's still in San Francisco Ballet, the prima ballerina, and she would come to our school every so often and take class. And so anyway, it was never foreign to me. Like, I mean, I always knew there weren't that many Asian people, and you always zero in on like the Asians when you're watching a show. You're like, oh, there are Asian dancers out there.
Right.
But how it's informed me, I mean, growing up with Asian parents, I feel like in general, like they're pretty strict when it comes to, being disciplined and kind of poor, like, just working hard work ethic, I want to say, is from my parents. And then just, what I had said earlier about like them not necessarily questioning so much about the ballet world, even though they didn't know very much about the ballet world, they would just give everything to my sister and I, And so I think even though they never, Asian parents communicate in my head in two different ways. One, by feeding you, and two, by just like giving you their kids their everything. And so I think just having known that, like, that's kind of informed me in terms of how I'm to, work and how I approach my craft. With as much vigor and work ethic and with whatever energy I have.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. With that being said, and you having like keyed into being like, claiming like, there's an Asian on stage. How do you think the ballet world, if you want to make it macro, or just the world that you've experienced? I don't want you to feel like you have to speak for the entire world of ballet if you don't feel comfortable doing so. But how do you think we're doing in terms of race and representation?
Mm-hmm. I always find that question difficult to answer because I think ballet is I think in general our world, not the ballet world, our world is moving towards diversity and inclusion and acceptance, no matter what you look like, who you are. Ballet is such a traditional art form. It's based on tradition, and is that opposite of inclusion and diversity? I'm not sure, but it's definitely fun to talk about. I enjoy talking about it, and I think companies in America are definitely kind of in line with like where America as a country, I think, is moving forward towards. Within our company, we've had more meetings, like full company meetings, and talks about this issue than we've ever had in my going on 20 years of being with San Francisco Ballet. So I think there's definitely, this pot is stirring. I don't know if it's like the right way, the wrong way to go, but it's definitely stirring, and I think that's probably the most important thing.
The discussions are being had. It's definitely, exactly. you bring up a really interesting point about tradition, and it's some of the pushback that Phil and I have had and this initiative. And at first it surrounded first around Nutcracker, because New York City Ballet was having the same sort of diversity talks. I was on the diversity committee, and then it came up, the Chinese divertissement, and he was talking about casting, and I was like, it doesn't really matter who you cast, and if you want to cast this person in the Arabian, divertissement, that's fine. I don't think that they're going to think you're tokenizing someone because you want to choose this person. She's great. She would fit in the role. It's like, you're going to have a bigger problem with just presenting the Chinese divertissement as is right now. And we then, Phil and I have had many discussions with you're talking about the Balanchine legacy. You're talking about a time-honored choreographer and iconic leader in ballet. And how do you make needed adjustments but still honor first of all this tradition and ritual of Nutcracker that sustains most of our ballet companies,
right?
And two, how do you not dishonor what the choreography was? I mean, Phil and I are not saying that Balanchine was racist because he depicted a Cooley caricature. We're saying that was the image that was presented to him in America during that time, in the 50s. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on Nutcracker? Just, do you think it's okay to switch it around? I mean, San Francisco Ballet has a very, very wonderful Nutcracker production, and I always thought that was very inclusive of the Asian community, because there's such once again, much like Vancouver, which I didn't know, that's fascinating information. San Francisco also has a very, very large population of Asian Americans, so it's important to make them feel included.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if I can have never really thought about Nutcracker more than just oh my God, we have to do Nutcracker again this year. But I mean, our Nutcracker is choreographed and staged by Helgi. It's his Nutcracker, and what I can say about Helgi is that I've always known him to be someone who's so inclusive, and I'm not even just talking about race or to him, I don't think he's ever looked at people by the color of their skin. For him, and the longer I've been in the company, the more I've just kind of noticed that he just looks at the dancer, and I want to say he even goes beyond body, that most ideal body type and shape and whatnot. If there's a dancer that you cannot take your eyes off on stage, that's the dancer that he is really interested in. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth or whatnot, but just with the dancers that he's chosen to be in the company and the principals that I've been fortunate enough to watch, people who've retired and people who are currently dancing now, he's always just been about the celebration of what this human being can do on stage. I think that's the best way I can put it. So I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of beating around the bush when it comes to the Nutcracker.
No, it's fine. It's just, Phil did a very interesting, he's been talking to a lot of schools and a lot of younger generations, even younger than our age. They think there's this idea of cancel culture. And Phil and I are actually far more conservative in our thought. Is we definitely want Nutcracker to still be done, but there's a whole sect of younger generations who think we should not do Nutcracker anymore because it's a colonialist work. They think it, so it's like how, so that brings the discussion into then, okay, well, how do we make it so that it doesn't, yes, like colonialism happened, but how do we represent these cultures? This is a great way to, you know, when Nutcracker was first done in Europe, it was a way to travel around the world in 2.5 hours. How do we more properly represent those cultures in these, you know, minute-long, you know, 30-minute divertissements? And I think that's where the greater question comes in, is like, does it really need a reboot? You know, to Peter's credit, after having a discussion with Phil about the problematic areas of our Nutcracker divertissement, he made some changes, and and they were simple changes, and it didn't affect the choreography at all. I think the fingers were changed from this to like a more balletic port de bras. The rice paddy hat was changed to a nobility, which makes more sense anyway, because all of the other divertissement leads are of nobility too. So like those small changes aren't, you know, Phil and I take the viewpoint there that they're not changing the Balanchine's intent with choreography, but they all of a sudden make it inclusive.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of talking about it all, right? Because, yeah, that's really cool to hear, because it's such a tough balance to strike, I feel like. Yeah, I thanks. I have nothing to add to that, but that's the importance of talking, because that's where like great changes come. We're, you know, moving forward and making things. It's not even making it better. It's just like it makes more sense. There's, you know, it's more correct.
Right. It's representing a culture in a realistic way, as opposed to a hyper stylized, caricatured way that is, you know, not even true.
Right.
With that being said, have you ever experienced any sort of like discrimination in the ballet world, or outside of the ballet world, that you feel like sharing?
I want to say when I was really young, I remember having someone call me names, and not even in school. I want to say it was like, you know, totally, you know, some kid just being like, oh, there's so and so, and being called names. So I have experienced that ignorance, but it felt like that was a really long time ago. Within the ballet world, it's hard to say, because like I said, like when I was younger, I was definitely a lot more insecure, and not necessarily because of my race, I think just in general. I think I realize now that it wasn't necessarily maybe like I wasn't casted in something because of the way it looked, but more just like them wanting someone who was kind of putting yourself out there more. I think the way I was trained, and even coming from like a kind of like a Chinese background, I've always been someone who's more reserved, or, you know, I grew up being trained. I remember my ballet teacher specifically saying, you know, when you join a big company, always stand in the back, always be respectful to, you know, the people who've been there longer, and, you know, don't overstep your boundaries. And so I wouldn't have changed that advice. Like, I feel like I am who I am today because I took that advice, but also at the same time, I'm not sure it necessarily helped I'm not sure, it helped me get to a place where I wanted to be, you know, like getting more featured roles, because now I like always encourage, especially if I see like someone who's more shy in the company, I'd be like, go stand in the front. So yeah, I don't think I've necessarily experienced any sort of racism within the dance world. It was more just maybe like within myself.
Okay. Yeah, like exploring the limits of yourself and the insecurities there. That makes sense. And I was also, and like I knew when I first went to SAB, I remember people being like, you should try to make yourself. You need to make yourself stand out, but don't be super aggressive about that. And now I see like kids come in today to the company from the school, and they're like, you know, everyone has a certain spot. I don't know if you're like this in your company class, but like when you're there for 20 years, it's kind of like understood that like your spot is your spot. Like whether or not like I'm fine, it's late, that is still my spot. And so like, when the new piece like there, and you're just kind of like, what is this disrespect?
I have to say that it's like I go back and forth, because sometimes I'm annoyed, and then other times I'm like, oh, it's just the spot, Fran, get over yourself. But then other times I'm like, I've been here. I need a cane to walk in the studio, like give me that spot.
It's like let me creature comfort.
I go back and forth with that one.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So I'm going to rephrase this question, because you've already been so wonderful in explaining how supportive your parents were in this decision, and that like it also makes me super giggle that you guys chose San Francisco Ballet because the paycheck was the biggest.
So Asian.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But like, so I'm going to switch it on to you. Like, what would you feel about, you know, your baby when the time comes, if, you know, he decides he wants to become a dancer? What are your feelings about it? What, like,
honestly, yeah, I mean, if he's healthy and happy and doing what he's passionate about, like, go for it. I say that like with hesitance, because I just know how hard you know how hard it is in the ballet world. And I just, you know, you see people breaking all the time, and you need, I feel like you can really, I don't know, personally, I love it so much, but I feel like I strike a pretty good balance in terms of work life and life. So, you know, I think if he's healthy and happy, I say go for it. But, you know, I'm going to set him up for...
set him up for other pathways, not just like...
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, here's your purpose. Yeah, that's a great answer. Great answer. I didn't mean to put you in the hot spot for that. No. I mean, you literally just had a baby. But like, and that's probably anxiety producing in its own right, me asking you to think about him like already leaving the nest. So I didn't mean to like
not at all.
But okay, so the next question is, and I've also rephrased this, like, because you teach a lot. You've also been giving these amazing stretch classes. You gave a beautiful class for Worldwide Ballet, their Zoom situation. What do you want to say what's advice for young dancers now who are trying to branch out into a career in dance? I mean, this is just insane. I don't even know how I'm going to answer this question when it comes time for me to answer these.
Young dancers. Honestly, I feel like it's advice that you would give to any young person going into any field. If that's what you want to do, you put your all in it. You put all of your energy in it. You be as inquisitive as possible. You put in the extra work, you know, stay later, come earlier. And don't be afraid if you're, I don't know. I think I give this advice because of who I was as a younger dancer. You know, I got the advice of like, you know, always stand behind someone. And you know, I think actually these days kids don't need to be told to go put themselves out there, because I think they're doing just fine. But no, there are always dancers who are a little bit more shy. And I want to say, if you're the shy person, you know, put yourself out there. It's okay to, I think the greatest advice, and that something that like kind of made it click for me, is to not have any inhibitions when you are rehearsing, when you are on stage. The people that I've seen come through the company that have always done well are people who just, you know, I think it's hard to not care about what other people think of you, but in that moment when you have that, you know, rare opportunity to do something, don't be afraid to fail. You know, don't be afraid to just like go for it. And those are the dancers that are most exciting to watch anyway, right? The people who like aren't gonna care if they fall flat on their
like I like unpredictability in a certain sense. It like creates an exciting moment, and just thinking like everything is so ephemeral in this art. Like the rehearsal is gone, it doesn't come back. The performance is gone. Like
and people don't remember. Like, you'd be surprised. I mean, you remember every little thing that went wrong in your show, but other people, you know, they've moved on 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So. I'm also like, when I've bamboozled like the choreographers. When I tore my ACL, I like re-subluxed it on stage in a performance, and like Justin Peck, for some reason, I don't know if he was being like extremely kind. He could have been, but like Nikki was like, "Oh no, I just thought you were feeling yourself, so you did a different kind of jump." It looked like I did like a Martha Graham style, like it's like my leg literally gave out, and I was like, "No. Justin, it wasn't changing your choreography." He was like, "It didn't bother me," and I was like, "Well, I have to get surgery now." So.
Oh my gosh.
Like he didn't, like he like it totally did not occur to him. Like the ballet master, my friend Craig Hall, had like run backstage. He's like, that was not a good thing that just happened. But like in terms of him, like he just thought like, "Oh, I just thought you were in the moment." And I was like, "That's amazing that you were willing to give me that freedom." Yeah. But yeah, I love that. I think that's what makes being in the audience so exciting. And
I think the balance of that, the balance of like having freedom, but then, you know, obviously you need a foundation to work from, right? So you like go to class every day, kids. Take ballet class every day, you know, work on your craft, and then you can go out there and like be completely free and let it all go. If you don't have a foundation to work from, then I'd say it'll be quite difficult, and you probably also just won't last as long. It's a great, like, you know, if you've been in this world for 20 years or so, it gets harder every year. So enjoy the time when you're pain free, and then just, you know, work a little harder to when you are in pain.
Yeah, it's such truth. And you bring up such good points that like commitment, I think commitment in general for humanity right now, we have such short attention spans. Like, you know, programs have to be shorter now. Like, you know, under 2.5 hours, like full lengths are it's hard to have nights that have 2 intermissions. I think just like the general idea of commitment, you have to commit fully to this art form. And that's something that I love that you stressed about it. And just like and the idea that like you need a strong foundation. I think there's like a Picasso quote where he says the importance of like what makes breaking the rules exciting is having the strong foundation in which to do it. It's like what makes jazz musicians so amazing. They are so precise, how they can go off on a riff. Like, you need such knowledge of the rules in order to understand how to bend them.
Yeah. Well said.
No, you didn't. No, you did great advice. So then I'm also going to pick your brain on, if we're switching the focus, what do you think we need to do to make sure when this time comes when we're back in the theater to build a more loyal and hopefully younger and inclusive audience?
Oh, isn't that like the question of our time right now? I mean, I feel like companies are already, slowly tapping into it, but yeah. I mean, young people are interested in different things right now. And it's weird because they're interested in different things, yet like still somehow the full lengths are like what sell out. So there is still love for the I feel like for tradition. I don't think that has necessarily the love for that is gone. But yeah, I want to say maybe it's not even something that is like, we maybe need to look at it from the beginning. Like maybe it's like the young like the kids in elementary school, like maybe those are the kids that we have to focus on. And even my son, like I think introducing art to a young generation, but also like a diverse generation. I mean, I think a huge reason why big ballet companies aren't as diverse as they are is because so many young kids who are of different cultures don't get the opportunity to enter into this world. Like I was fortunate enough that my parents put me in dance, but like so many other families out there just don't have the resources. So, and I think companies are doing it, but yeah, it's just like maybe that's our focus. And I think that's the hard thing, right? In general, it's harder for us to look long term than it is to look short term, right? We always just want like immediate results, but maybe we need to work on something that'll last 20 years, so that this 5-year-old, when he or she is 25, is all of a sudden she has a few dollars to spend and she wants to spend it on going to the ballet because she was exposed to it when she was younger.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think you've this whole interview has had this like wonderful theme of like the slow burn is the right way. It's just slow and steady, and it's such a wonderful and interesting viewpoint that you've had, and also just like perspective as like a new mother in the ballet world. Like, wow, what an achievement in itself! And you already have such a celebrated career. So, however long that you felt it took, like it's super exciting, and it took the right amount of time. I mean, like I also had a trajectory that's at times felt like I was like in the mud, just like stuck.
Totally.
And but I wouldn't change a single day of that. I think that's like where I get a lot of it's formed me as an adult. And so it doesn't have to happen fast. And yeah. I think, like you said, like you're almost at risk of burnout when it happens fast, because it requires so much heart and so much sacrifice, as well as like love. And it's being able to do that in a sustained release over the course of, for me now going on 20 years too, it's been the better route for me.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you so much for just being so open and lovely. It's wonderful to chat with you. I hope that, we find another opportunity to like do our little cooking show because that would be
For
fun.
sure.
I'm down with
I'm
that.
down.
All right, so we'll have to put that on the calendar. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Check out our Instagram right now for the reveal of who the next dancer chat will be. And as always, tune in at noon for the next conversation. Frances, you're awesome.